Hi, my name is Eric Kinsey. I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana, and you're listening to Rulers and Riders, the podcast where we talk to creative people about what they do and what they ride. My guest this week on the show is James Straker. James is from Brisbane, Australia. James is a just kind of an all-around raconteur. He has been a musician. He's owned a vintage toy store. He has been a tour manager for several well-known bands. He also sort of has a business importing classic American cars as well as vintage arcade machines. And he's also a drag racing champion. And we kind of touch on all those things during our conversation. He's just a very interesting cat, and he's, in person, one of the most genuine, sweet people you could ever meet. Funny story about how I met James. I had followed him, or he had followed me on Instagram, I'm not sure which, and I was down at my buddy Dave's, his son's birthday party, Otto. We all get together for Otto's birthday party every summer, and our friend Turtle came over in a freshly restored 73 Dodge Charger. Beautiful car, shiny black paint, red stripe, new BF Goodrich raised white letter tires, nice rims, just new chrome, just really, really well done restoration. And so I posted a picture of it on Instagram, as I'm wont to, and James replied, "Is it for sale?" And I said, "Yeah, I think he mentioned something about selling it." He said, "Well, how much?" I was like, "Honestly, I don't know, man." He's like, "Well, will you find out for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I talked to Turtle. I got a price. I, told him, instant message him back, and he said, "Yeah, I'll take it." And I'm like, "Okay, but aren't you in Australia? I mean, I'm in Indiana." And he said, "Well, yeah, I'll come there and I'll buy it." And I'm like, "All right, dude, whatever." I really just sort of, assumed it was some sort of like internet, crankery or of some sort. And God damn it, if he didn't show up about 3 months later, and he bought the car, and him and one of his buddies, Jugs, came to my house. I picked him up at the airport, spent the night, took him out to get tacos, drove down to Bloomington, picked up the car. They stuck around another night, and the next morning they lit out for the East Coast and had a pretty big adventure. And James and I have been friends ever since. We talk pretty regularly on text or email or whatever. Occasionally we'll do like a Skype call or whatever, but we've gotten to know each other pretty well. And even when he or I go through ups or downs, we're like have a real friendship. So it was really great to sit down with James and do a conversation for the show, and kind of get into some different things. We kind of meandered all around. It was early in the morning for him. It was kind of evening for me. So we're kind of both at different cycles of our daytime, and you could kind of tell that during the conversation. And we didn't really stick to any kind of format. And we talked. We went over a bit, maybe I think the conversation I edited it down a little bit, so it's around an hour and 40 minutes. Since I'm going to an every other week format for the summer, because man, I'm just crazy busy with my daughter and going out of town on the weekends and stuff. It's just real hard for me to set up an interview and edit it and all every week. So if you pay attention to my Instagram, I'm going to a every other week format just for the summer until probably after Apocalypse Run at the beginning of August. So I thought about, it's a long conversation. I'll break it up into 2 episodes. And I was like, what the heck? I'm going to every other week anyway. I'll just leave it. So, I got some more guests coming up. If we go over an hour, but it's an every other week thing, hey, you can just pretend like it's a new show and just listen to it half on one Thursday and then the other half next. Whatever you want to do, it's a free to be you and me kind of situation. So So that's the conversation with James coming up. I just wanted to tell you also that this weekend in Indianapolis, if you're in the Midwest, there is a really cool event going on, and that's going to be at June 10th, and that's in my neighborhood of Fountain Square in Indianapolis, and that is called the Reunion. It used to be called the Rockers Reunion, but there was a little bit of a promoter change. So Eric Anderson, our guest a couple episodes back, he's sort of taken the helm on that, and he's putting that on. So the Reunion, Fountain Square, June 10th, and I think it gets started at like 11-ish, I think. But they're going to block off a couple blocks, lots of bikes. It's not choppers only. It's not cafe racers only. It's not classics only. It's not new bikes, old bikes. It's just a bike thing, and it's all different kinds of bike people. There's going to be sponsors, vendors. There's some bars. There's some great Mexican food in the neighborhood. There's, if you want to get in the fountain and, wait around, you're more than welcome to do that. But yeah, if you got nothing going on this Saturday, looks like the weather's going to be good, ride over to Indianapolis. We're maybe like 2 blocks off the interstate. It's an easy ride from Cincinnati, Louisville, Dayton, Columbus, a little longer from Cleveland or Chicago or Detroit. But, what else are you going to do on a Saturday? Ride your freaking motorcycle to Indianapolis, hang out, have some fun, see some other motorcycles, and, just really enjoy the summer. So definitely check that out. I'll make sure that there's some information about that in the show notes and on the blog. I'm rambling. It's about 10 o'clock at night. There's a full moon tomorrow, and I need to watch it. Let's talk to James.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So what's going on? What's going on in Brisbane, Australia?
Are we recording now?
Yep, we're recording.
Oh, okay. What's going on in Brisbane, Australia? Right now it's 10 a.m. It's a beautiful winter's day, which in Queensland means it's still like summer in the rest of the world, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's never really cold here.
Yeah?
I don't understand why I've lived here my whole life, because I don't like the heat at all. Let me tell you what it is on a second. Let's work out the temperature in Brisbane is, and I'll tell you what it is in. It's 18 degrees Celsius, which is 64 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's not bad.
Yeah,
That's
winter.
Very comfortable.
It's just nice.
You could wear shorts if you want, with a hoodie, maybe.
I might even put on 2 t-shirts.
If you want, you could do that. Go crazy.
A little extreme.
Yeah. So
how many podcasts have you done now?
How many have I done now? This, I think, will be 23. I think this will be like number 23.
Yeah, dude. That's awesome.
So
I liked it. It's an odd number. Even numbers do my head in a little bit.
So last week I went down to Nashville, and I interviewed my buddy Dickerson.
Go Nuts. The Go Nuts are your favorite band.
Yes, yeah, one and the same. And we talked like so effortlessly for like, he's like, I gotta, go to a lunch thing, so I can't, I talk for a little bit. All right, man, that'd be great. So we talked, and unfortunately, like, had to call it like a little over an hour in. We're just like, man, we could keep talking for hours, like literally.
Days.
Yeah, just all day about everything. And, but he was going to go to lunch with Lloyd Green, who's this like really famous pedal steel guitar player. Like he played with Johnny Paycheck and Waylon Jennings and Buck Owens and Flying Burrito Brothers and just like you name it. Like he played on just all these records. But then in the room, he had this Speedy West guitar, steel guitar, that had been on thousands of recordings with like Capitol Studios in Los Angeles, and he traded it for another guitar from the Buck Owens estate. So it just, it was just one of those like weird, like crossroads moments.
Absolutely.
In the life of Deke, it was just like really, funny. But I don't know. He's cool. He's my bud. So it was a good time.
He's been to Australia a lot of times.
Yeah, and he plays with. Usually when he tours Australia, he plays with John Flynn, who I think is from Brisbane.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. I think
I picked up some 78s yesterday at a thrift store, and made me think of you. Well, I'm just trying to find it here. The weirdest thing is I found a 78 which was coloured vinyl.
Oh, yeah?
Coloured, whatever it is. I've never seen one before. And it was actually, like, I don't know if it was printed, the actual vinyl was pressed here in Brisbane, but it's got it's actually got like TC Byrne and Company Limited, the Valley, Brisbane. And so, like Fortitude Valley is kind of like the red light district of Brisbane. Or it was for a long while. I got a Jimmy Rogers 78.
Oh, yeah, which one?
Home Call, and She Was Happy Till She Met You. And I love that it says on it, Jimmy Rogers, singing with guitar. Yeah, I love Jimmy Rogers, man. It has must not be sold below price fixed by patentee and must not be used for radio broadcasting nor publicly performed.
Huh. Yeah, that's a good one, man.
And there was a couple Edison records there as well. So in between, the Edison record was a tube for a little while.
Right.
When they first came out, they were like a round tube. And these were the Edison records where they first started with like records, but they must have been a quarter-inch thick. They looked like six or eight vinyls thick. It was amazing. I've never seen one of those before.
Right, like a crepe almost, just like real thick.
Yeah, that's it, dude. Exactly.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, it's so crazy that you kind of like literally say, like I went yesterday, and the reason I was up in this country area is I was visiting with my dad and my mum. I went and visited my granddad. He's 101.
Yeah.
And he's definitely sliding, I guess you'd say. Like the people in the old folks' home were like, he seems to have checked out mentally. And mentally, he's as sharp as a tack. It's crazy. His mind is so active still. But just physically, his body's giving up.
Right.
And I was thinking about that when I was looking at these thrift stores, thinking, man, it's crazy. Like, in 100 years, it's gone from his house when he was born didn't have electricity,
right,
through to we're now doing an interview over the internet, bouncing off a satellite that's technically not really costing you or I any money. Like,
I know.
Facebook.
I know,
that's
man.
wild. Like that's amazing increases in technology. And I kept thinking again about how that technology's had positive and negative effects, obviously, on things that you and I both love, like music and guitars and movies and cars and bikes. People have so much more access to information now.
I know.
A young dude in some crazy country that hasn't got a hot rod scene can access people's information.
Right.
And people doing repairs, get on eBay and buy parts, or ask for help with a wiring diagram.
Well,
and the thing I was
you're right. No, go ahead.
I was the thing I find really interesting with this is the negatives and the positives. Is like do you remember when downloading first came out? Like when you could use Napster.
Right.
You still have to know the band's name to download something. Like you couldn't just download good punk rock.
Right.
And so that was always the limitation to me with something like Napster. Was like you didn't know the band name. If you didn't know the band name, you couldn't download the music or export your music. And then Spotify comes along and has, hey, you're playing this band, you'll probably like these bands as well.
Right.
And a lot of the time, it's pretty accurate. And then, so you've got this thing where all of a sudden these bands are getting exposed, getting lots more listens, but getting no money for it. Right. So it's just this constant battle back and forth. I don't know if battle's the right word. A constant tussle back and forth.
Right.
With technology benefiting, then a negative, then a benefit, then a negative, then a benefit, then a negative. And I'm thinking, will there ever be a point where it just levels out? Does technology do that? Does change do that ever? Does it just go, hey, here's a music providing service that actually pays everyone fairly?
Well, it's weird. And I mean, like, music is a great example because, being a historian and a musician, like, I've always been, like, real fascinated in, like, the history of music. And, 100 years ago, or, maybe a little longer, before recording became like it's something, middle class people could afford, the big thing was sheet music. And they would have like, in the United States, they would have, like, strikes that would, like, labor strikes with, like, musicians unions that would last for, like, a year because they weren't getting a big enough return on sheet music.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It's insane. Or they thought that, like, cabaret and vaudeville performances, got paid too much or not enough. And then, then records came in, and then that, like, knocked, sheet music and, like, parlor guitars and mandolin sales off. And then radio came in, and then that kind of ruined the recording industry for a while. And then, and then radio, like, killed vaudeville and, like, live performance. And then, Prohibition came in, and then nightclubs became a thing with speakeasies and jazz, and just it just went back and forth, man, for, like, the last 100 years. And like, you're pretty much the same age as me, aren't you? How old are you? Like 45?
45, yeah.
45. So, I mean, like, you remember, like, being a kid and, like, cassette tapes being just, like, a huge, like, it seemed like a huge threat to the record industry because you could just, like, dub, your minute work album onto a cassette.
The Dead Kennedys, the Dead Kennedys released a cassette, and it said, music pirating is killing the record industry, so we left the other side of this tape blank for you to help. And actually had that printed on the B side of the
cassette. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the funny thing about that too is, like, Jello Biafra is so I don't know. I don't want to be uncharitable, but he's, like, so, like, I think he's, like, sued the guys in the Dead Kennedys for, like, playing the songs that he wrote, like, playing them live, and he's just, like, real persnickety about his what he controls. And so, I mean,
the hard thing there is I can never get a clear take on the backstory. I can never get a clear take on, because obviously we're talking about dudes who spent a lot of time together, and there's personal beef, and, I was owed this, you were owed that. And being in a band is such a weird thing because you start with people, for the most part, who you want to hang out with. They're your friends, they're your peers, and you're like, I like to hang out with these dudes, I don't want to get a real job. So let's play music and live that lifestyle. And then it becomes, oh shit, this is almost work, but we're not getting paid much money, which brings in a whole bunch of different stress. And then it ends up with, for the most part, normally hating each other. Yeah, for sure. And it's really unfortunate too, because there's, like, bands that I love, like the Dead Kennedys, and, like, and they're all still alive, like, all the same members. They have all the same gear. I mean, they're older and grayer and, fatter now or whatever. But, like, I saw Jello Biafra in San Francisco about a year and a half ago play 3 songs with Reverend Horton Heat, and he sounded amazing. Like, it sounded exactly like the Dead Kennedys record. Great voice, great stage presence. So you like, get to a point where these bands were just like, why are you being such assholes? Just go out and do a tour.
you know,
just stop being jerks about it. Like Black Flag's another perfect example of that.
Yeah.
I was really lucky, actually. See, Dead Kennedys was the band that got me into punk rock. Like, I remember when I was 14 years old,
right,
finding the Dead Kennedys, and just my mum being so offended.
Sure.
By, like, why would someone call a band that? That's a terrible name. You know? And then a very influential store here called Rock Moss Records, which was the first import record store in Australia to ever open up in the 80s, got taken to court over stocking Dead Kennedys records. They won, but it still put them under a lot of pressure. And I was really lucky. In 2014, I was on tour with NoFX in Europe, and I got to have dinner with Jello Biafra, which I was like, this is like,
Yeah.
And it was so bizarre because you're so used to the dude's voice. So every time he said something, it would just sound like the beginning of a Dead Kennedy song. Like, I wonder if the waiter's going to, is the waiter going to bring a menu? And it's like, he's just waiting for the drums and that guitar to kick in. It was absolutely bizarre.
Like, when you talk to him, you want to be like, hey, will you just, like, real quick say for me, like, God told me to skin you alive? Like, you know, just to hear him say it.
The funny thing was, we were talking about record collecting, and he said that obviously every time he goes somewhere, someone goes, "Oh, I'm going to take you to this punk music store. It's great." And he's like, "I don't need any more punk music. I've got it all." So I asked him what he was collecting, and he said he started collecting this weird era of German music where there was a period, I think it was in the 80s, where the German government implemented a law where every German music company must release X amount of German artists.
Okay.
Like a minimum release of national artists.
Uh-huh.
And they started running out of bands, basically. So what they'd do, they'd find a cover band, and these cover bands would record basically their versions of other people's songs with their own lyrics. So it was a new song kind of thing, and it fulfilled this quota. So there's all these bands doing, like, you know, Black Sabbath covers, but with their own lyrics. It's just
I've heard some of that stuff. It's super weird.
Like, super, super weird. And it was amazing. We ate dinner at this Italian restaurant in Berlin. The promoter, the touring agent, is an American guy. He owns a really, really fucking good Italian restaurant, actually. And it has, like, maybe quite a few thousand albums and vinyl turntables in the restaurant. So while you're eating dinner, you just go up and choose records and play over the stereo.
Oh, wow.
So that, for 14-year-old me, that was very surreal. Like, just sitting there choosing records with Jello Biafra. Going, well, what should we listen to next, Jello?
Well, so let's kind of back up a little bit, man, because we don't get to talk very often because you live in Australia and I'm in Indiana. But so let's just kind of, like, start from the beginning. So I met you through
the Instagrams.
Through Instagram, and it was when I posted a picture of my buddy's turtles. Was it 73 or 74?
73 Charger. And
73 Charger.
Fell in love.
Yeah.
I was literally like, I need to own that car. Yeah. And we started chatting. Like, I find out about it, found out a price, and I set up a way of buying it, and it was, I think, literally 10 weeks later, it was in America.
I don't even think it was that long. I think it was...
It probably wasn't.
Because it was, well, hold on. So, yeah, it was mid-June, because it was my buddy Dave's son's birthday, mid-June, and then you showed up at, like, in September. So, yeah, probably...
Yeah, so it's
probably about 10 weeks.
I think it was just under 3 months, and then we drove 3,500 kilometers in 5 days.
Yeah. So
that was a crazy drive.
Yeah. A champion road trip for sure. Mm. So your family history's kind of unique. Was it your grandfather that came from Europe and he was a refugee to Australia?
My great granddad came from the Ukraine. He and his family smuggled their way out of the Ukraine. There's not a lot of family history on that side of my family because obviously at the time because they're fleeing a fairly hectic situation in the Ukraine, being Jews. If you had personal documents on you, just get sent back to where you came from.
Right.
So literally my family history stops with him. And I actually don't even know how they came to be in Australia. Because Australia's obviously got a lot of weird stuff going on with immigration, not like probably the level of America, but a lot of pro and against. And it's always that weird one for me because I'm Australian. Like, I was born here, but I wouldn't have been born here if my great-granddad didn't come here, if that makes sense.
Right.
And then, so yeah, that's. I've always wanted to go back to Ukraine too. I was meant to go there in 2014 when I was on tour with NoFX, but my mum asked me not to. And I've very rarely ever done anything my mum asked me not to.
What? She asked you not to go to Ukraine?
Yeah, because it was 2014. It was kind of hectic there at the time.
Donbass.
And I remember her ringing me and just saying, "Please don't go." And I kind of went, "Oh man, she's asking really rationally." I'm meant to do this still, so I took her advice and didn't go. But definitely, it's definitely not safe now, so I'd like to go back.
Right. So, and your father was a Vietnam vet with the Royal Australian Army?
Yeah. So my dad served as a combat engineer, field engineer in Vietnam from 68 to 70, I think. It would have been 67 to 69, I think.
Right.
And my older sister was born in 70, and I was born in 72. So I'm literally the most cliched black sheep in the world. Like, my mum and my dad were both in the army. My granddad on my dad's side was Air Force. My granddad on my mum's side was Navy. My sister's an award-winning federal police officer. And she was a police officer in America for a little while. She worked with the San Diego PD, Oceanside PD, and my mum always loved telling the story that the same day she got awarded Officer of the Month at Oceanside PD, I was getting arrested in Brisbane.
Yeah. Well, every family has the one guy who kind of has to do his own thing. And
isn't it weird though? Like, what makes that? Well, I was talking to a friend about this the other day. A friend Michael, who'd get on famously with loves good cars and bikes and everything. Like, what makes someone wake up one day and go, you know what? I really like 1950s cars versus I really like modern Nissan GTRs, or what makes a person go, I like Art Deco versus I like all chrome and steel, and it's really interesting that, and definitely for me, like, I didn't feel like, and this is again such a cliche to say, but it's so real, I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere until I found skateboarding and punk rock when I was about 14 years old.
Right.
And for the first time, I kind of went, oh, I feel normal-ish here.
Right.
And definitely, like, I was managing bands probably by the time I was 15, and by managing bands, I mean sneaking into the venues underage and vomiting after I drank like 2 beers. That was basically what I did for management, and that probably didn't really change much during my management career. And so I managed bands, I played in bands, and man, I'm not a good band manager. I'm not a good guitarist. This is a funny thing. I did another podcast interview last week, and the guys asked me about this, and I'm not really good at anything, but I'm a firm believer in that should never stop you from doing things. like I'm literally the person that most car people would on paper dislike because I can't spin tools. Like, I'm dangerous with tools, and if I didn't have the same big nose and bug eyes as my dad, I would swear I was adopted because he's the most practical motherfucker you've ever met.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's some, like, funny, like, hybrid vigor thing that happens with people. Like, I think that there always has to be a black sheep to...
Yeah, cool. So, yeah, I'm literally the dude that most people on paper wouldn't like. Like, I can't spin tools, and I have no business being anywhere near an engine, and I kind of, like, was like, well, man, why can't I, why can't I ride bikes? Why can't I drive funnel cars? You don't have to be able to spin tools, but it's funny that in every scene there's always those rules, like, and I guess the thing that I've always been was the underdog. It's like, well, like, I bought my first motorbike in 2008, which was at the ripe age of, what was that? 9 years ago. So 36, I bought my first motorbike. Never ridden a motorbike, never ridden a dirt bike, never ridden a scooter, nothing. And 10 weeks later, I won the Nostalgia Drags at Willet Bank Drags out here. First time I ever won something. First trophy I ever won. I think the only trophy I've ever won. I've still got it here somewhere. And, I'd never been to a drag race before, let alone competed in one. So I bought the bike off a friend of mine who's selling a 1978 Suzuki GS 750. And in its time, it was like, I think, the most powerful road bike you could buy.
Yeah,
you know, it was I think a modern 400 would eclipse it now. And so my first time ever riding it, I had it delivered to a friend's store. He makes really beautiful called Ash's Spoked Wheels, and he makes beautiful custom spoke wheels. And he was just doing a safety check on it for me, and I was like, I don't care if it's not roadworthy. I just want to make sure it can start and stop, basically. And so I got to his place at about 4:30 on Friday afternoon. It's in the city of Brisbane, and I said to him, "Hey, have you got a toilet? I really need to pee. I'm nervous. I've never ridden a bike before." And I go to the toilet, come back, and he's like, "Did you just say you've never ridden a motorbike?" I was like, "Nope." He's like, "Dirt bike? Nope. Scooter? Nope. Nothing." And he's like, and you can see this parental look like come over his face, like, am I morally responsible for this?
Yeah.
And I was like, "It's cool, dude. It can't be that hard." So my first time ever riding a motorbike was about 4:45 on a Friday afternoon in peak hour traffic, and I stalled it maybe 3 or 4 times in the first kilometre, and the electric start didn't work. At times I had to get off, kick-start it, get back on again, and keep riding.
Yeah.
But my theory's always been that, you know, stuff like bike riding can't be that hard, because not to sound terrible, dumb people do it. So, and I'm no fucking genius, but I'm not dumb. So I was like, okay, well, if, you know, they can do it, I can do it. And then literally, about 9 weeks later, my friend Matt, who used to run a magazine out here called TCB, really good photographer, and he was sponsoring Nostalgia Drags, and one of the riders pulled out, and they had to have X amount of riders, otherwise it didn't sort of qualify for the Drag Racing Association standards or whatever. Right. So I was like, I'll do it, and literally I get out there, never been to a drag race before, and I'm expecting, I guess, like a scene out of Grease, like 4 or 5 people standing around a concrete strip or something, like the LA River Dragway or something, you know. Yeah. And there's this giant stadium with, you know, like big seating and like lots of people and hundreds of cars and bikes and people doing burnouts. I'm like, oh, what have I done? And so I go through scrutineering. That's all good, and I get round to and they let us have that first practice run. And thankfully, the practice run was against Matt, who was racing as well. I was like, cool, at least I'm. You know, it's not some dude I don't know. Right. And people yelling at me to do burnouts and stuff. I'm like, I'm barely able to stand up straight at the moment. My legs are shaking so bad. Right. And I just remember that the dude, I don't know, he's called a marshal, the guy that tells you where to go, like waves me up. So I just go to this line, and then he kind of turns around at the wrong place, obviously, and he waves me forward again. Eventually gets down on his hands and knees and points at the spot on the ground where I'm meant to be to start the race. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go there. And he's just shaking his head at me. And I'd asked Matt what sort of times I should dial in. He said, look, if you're not going to run faster than 14 in that, so just dial in, 14 seconds. So I dialed in 14, and literally, like, red, yellow, green, and this is my mind. This is the sound the bike makes. Fuck. Shaking gears. But I just, out of sheer ass, which is the story of my life, ran like within, I think, a quarter of a second or something of my dial-in time every single time. And with that, that open, because it was an open class, into all staggered times, and I just won all 5 of my heats and won the whole fucking day. And I felt like such a fraud. I got interviewed for magazines and stuff. I was like, oh, this is terrible. Like, at the same time, thoroughly enjoying it, but I was like, this is like, I feel like a fraud. Like I'm going to get caught out here somewhere. Someone's going to have a bit of an issue with me. But
then you have people like staring daggers at you because they've been doing it all their lives and going at it like really earnestly and.
That's it, and I remember one dude was on excuse my ignorance, yes, I'm so not knowledgeable about bikes, like a K1000, is that a bike, a Kawasaki? Yeah. Similar era. This thing was like factory rebuilt, it was immaculate. Right. Because it's all staggered starts, I'm like in third gear. I take off and I'm in third gear. I'm like, I'm gonna win. And you hear this, when this bike comes past me doing about 200 kilometers an hour. And we get to the runoff bit, where you go down, you run off, and the guy pulls up next to me. He's like, well, at least your bike looks fast, buddy. I was like, oh, you douchebag. And we get around to the little bit where they give you your time printout, and he'd broken out his time, so he got disqualified. So I was like, at least I can stick to my times, buddy. It was very, very satisfying.
Yeah.
And, that was a good time.
So how did you, so when you were a teenager, and you had, started into, skateboarding and punk rock, sort of how did the progression go? Was it you were managing bands first, or were you playing in bands first?
Well, when I started, I didn't really listen to music until high school. My family's just not a musical family. We didn't have musical instruments in the house. Literally, my mum and dad had sort of I can remember they had 10 records. They had Neil Diamond, Hot August Night, a Kenny Rogers live record, a Nana Mouskouri record, some classical stuff, and probably some military tattoo sort of thing. And when I got to high school, I immediately fell in with the bad crowd. And I remember this guy, Rod Bunter, was the first dude who ever played with the Ramones on a really shitty Walkman cassette. And I remember listening to this Beat on the Brat. I'm like, these dudes are killing people. What are they doing? And I just instantly felt at home. And so a guy called David McCormack played in a band at the time. He was grade 12, maybe 11 or 12 time I was grade 8. And he played in a band called Who's Gerald, who later on became a pretty big Australian band called Custard. And I started hanging out with them. And like I said, being 14 or 15 years old, managing a band, the first big show I managed them at was they supported In Excess at a stadium out here, a big, not like a stadium, like a big concert hall out here. And this would have been 85, 86, I guess. In Excess were a big band out here.
Sure.
And I was just like, this is awesome. It's 15 years old, 14 or 15 years old, walking around the backstage area and there's just beer and people everywhere. And I'm like, this is good. I like this. And so I did that for a period of time. Obviously, I had to get a real manager at some point. And then they morphed into a band called what we would call Custard Gun when Who's Gerald split up. It was weird. They're on this compilation called Ruart, and there's a thing in Australia called The Curse of Ruart, and Youngblood. It was a compilation. Literally every band on this compilation broke up immediately after the compilation came out. It was weird. And so they started a new band called Custard Gun. I played guitar for 4 shows, and then I got kicked out of the band because I was a terrible guitar player. I was bad then and I'm bad now. And I remember David rang me and was like, we're having band practice tomorrow night. I was like, oh, cool. He goes, you don't have to come. I was like, oh, man. And from there, I tried to be in my own bands, but basically not having any musical ability somewhat impedes you to write songs. And then I think I had a collectible toy shop that I started when I was maybe 18, I think, and I ran for about 4 or 5 years, called Silver Rocket, which was named after a Sonic Youth song. And then I joined a band called the Melnicks, who was a little pop-punk kind of band, grunge pop-punk sort of thing.
Right.
That was really good fun. We released 3 albums, got signed to a label, and then I basically managed them and did a good job and a bad job, like everything I do in life. And then I managed some bigger Australian bands like Something for Kate and Magic Dirt, outside of Australia, probably not huge bands, but Magic Dirt was actually they're a fucking cool band. They don't play anymore. Dean, the bass player, passed away, but they were signed to Frank Kozik's label in the US. They were just a cool band, kind of Australia's answer to Caius and Queens of the Stone Age. They came from a town called Geelong, a little coastal surf town outside of Melbourne, and just crazy, amazing female songwriter, Adelita, and band, the big 26-inch kick or whatever it is, like Caius and Queens of the Stone Age. They were amazing. And so I managed bands, and I've done a lot of stuff. And I ran a nightclub, I owned a bar and a restaurant, I ran a record label for a little while. Just classic jerk of all trades, I guess. So when I first met you on the interwebs, I was working at a Harley Davidson dealership, and that was fun too. So I rode my first bike in 2008. I think in 2010 or 2011, I got this job working for a big big motorbike company out here called Team Moto, selling Japanese bikes, and I was applying. I just closed my restaurant down not far before that, and I was applying for like hundreds of jobs. Like I'd come home, like I'd never had to apply for a job before, and the internet hadn't been around before that when I was 14 or 15 looking at jobs. So I was like, man, you can just upload your resume and send it to people, and I was just applying for hundreds of jobs every week because I was bored. Some that I really shouldn't apply. I remember getting a rejection letter. I'd applied for some unknown reason to be in charge of decommissioning part of my state's rail network. It's good that I didn't get that job. I have no business decommissioning a rail network, you know. Probably like 1 o'clock in the morning, high on nitrous whippets or something. So, well, I like trains, you know. And so I got this phone call from this woman saying, do you want to come have this job interview tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, sure, what's it for? And she's like, oh, it's motorcycle hauling. I was like, yeah, that's great, what's the job? And she's like, I was like, no, seriously, what's the job? She's like, it's motorbike sales. I was like, okay. And so I'm not a particularly clean-cut guy, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to dress up for this, either going to get me or not, so I just put on my Vans sneakers and my Dickie shorts and my T-shirt. I put a button-up shirt on that day, I think. And I was kind of like, well, that's my uniform, that's what I'm wearing. But I took my drag racing trophy along, and I remember walking, it wasn't a group interview, but there was like probably 15 or 20 dudes sitting in the waiting area, and everyone's in their really cheap suits and stuff, if you know what I mean. And they're all looking at me, and this one guy goes, what's that? And I'm like, that's my drag racing trophy for motorbike drags. Don't you have one? And this is, oh. And so I had the interview with the HR manager. I got on pretty well with him, and they called me back within an hour, which I think was a good sign. And they said, we're not coming back come back in tomorrow and interview with me again, but also the managing director of the company who runs like, they had 20 stores or something at the time. I was like, cool. So I go back in for my second interview, and after about 5 minutes, Chris, the other guy, the guy that ran the company, lovely dude, said, excuse me, champion. He always said champion. He said, just, I don't mean to be rude, but you're a little bit insane, aren't you? And I was like, well, the good part more than anything. And so they were like, look, we want to give you a job, but we don't want to give you a sales job. We want to put you in parts and accessories. I was like, look, I'm a humble dude. Thank you very much. I'll happily accept any job, but I think I can sell motorbikes. And, what I'd like to suggest is, how about this? I imagine there's a probation period. Yep, 12 weeks, cool. After 12 weeks, I'll either be right and I'll flip you the bird and tell you I was right, or I'll be wrong and you flip me the bird and sack me. And the guy's like, okay. And literally first day in, I sold a bike. And I was like, this is cool. I like this because I don't know anything, obviously, about mechanics at all. And I just like talking to people. I remember, like, literally my first week in the job, it was, I think 2012, the end of 2011, because Yamaha had launched the new 2012 WR 450F trail bike thing, and this old guy comes in and is like, they still having the problem with the lifters on that? And I was like, I don't know what a lifter is, sir. And he's like, what kind of bloody motorbike bloody guy are you, not doing this? And thankfully one of the mechanics came past and razzed him and said, actually, they don't have lifters in the engine anymore, sir. And I can't talk technically to people. I don't understand why you would. So I was just like, I'll just talk to people. I like talking. And I just, like, literally someone would walk in and go, hey, you want to buy a motorbike today? And they'd be like, hey, that's a bit full on, son. And I'm like, well, I'm being paid to do this, so it's bad if I don't. So, I'll still help you if you don't want to buy one, but if you do want to buy one, let's just cut to the chase. It'll be a lot more fun. And so, I smashed the crap out of all my targets, which was really fun. And it was the first time in my life that I ever had, like, a solid income and holiday pay and sick pay and all that kind of stuff. And after about a year and a half, the store I was in started getting in pre-owned Harleys, and I fell in love with them. There was just something, the Harley Davidson thing, and I found out there's more commission in them too, so I was like, okay, this is a win-win. So I started becoming pretty interested in the Harleys, and they eventually asked me to come across to the Harley store, and it was the first time in a really long while I hadn't fucked up anything. So the Harley store was still owned by the same company, and I was like, I was very appreciative of the offer, but I'm doing really well and I don't want to fuck this up, so I'm just going to stay here. And he and Chris, the guy said, look, come down, have a chat with me and have a chat with Scotty. And Scotty's the guy that bought all the pre-owned Harleys, and he used to be pretty high up in the various, I don't want to go on air about a motorcycle club of some description here. And amazing dude. a proper hard man. And I remember Chris, the managing director guy, was talking to me about facts and figures and PRU and all that kind of stuff. And Scotty could tell I was glazing over. I wasn't that stoked on whatever, profit return, blah, blah, blah. And I remember him saying, I'm not going to be able to do his voice justice, but he's like a smaller Chopper Reed, this dude. And he's like, excuse me for a second, Chris. He goes, do you know what we do here, James? And I was like, what do we do, Scotty? He goes, we sell cunts their dreams. I was like, I'm in. And that Scott was definitely the same sort of salesman I guess I modeled myself on, where he didn't try and sell what he thought the person wanted. He just actually asked the person what they wanted, and could work out what they wanted. And so I sold Harleys for about 3 years, and I really enjoyed that. I had such good. I got to ride them every day, and not a lot of old Harleys, obviously, because that's a different market in Australia. There's nowhere near as many old Harley Davidsons out here, but man, that was a good job, just going to ride them day in and day out. It was so much more. I found it a lot more enjoyable selling Harleys than selling Japanese bikes because, well, if someone walks into a Harley Davidson dealership, they're after a Harley. They're not. If someone walks into your Yamaha dealership, they're looking at Hondas, they're looking at Aprilias, they're looking at every super sports bike, and I guess and that's the funny too, where Chris and Scotty said, the beard and the tattoos helps a little bit. I literally rang my mum. I was like, I told you the tattoos were a good idea. I got my first tattoo when I was on my 18th birthday, and it's Hong Kong Fooey on my upper arm. And my mum chased me around the kitchen table with a knife, telling me I'd fucked my life. And my dad just had this deep shit-eating grin on his face. I was really stoked. I was proud of my dad. Going, "God, Dad, this is amazing you're doing." And then years later, I found out he thought it was a stick-on tattoo, and I was taking the piss out of him. Yeah. And so I sold Harleys for about 3 years, and I said, look, it was that funny thing where some people don't like you being involved in something if they don't perceive that you have the same history to it or the same connection to it that they do. And I've always found that very strange. That the one I always think about is the Ramones T-shirt. People going, that guy doesn't even know about the Ramones. It's like, well, who gives a fuck? Tell him about the Ramones. Educate him about the Ramones. Tell him about the other bands that came before and after them. Right. We're so snobby about this stuff. Like, if you wear a Nike T-shirt, no one asks you who designed the swoosh logo, do they? But if you wear a Ramones T-shirt, there's this checklist of what you should and shouldn't have done. And that always surprises me. Like, I think because music is so personal to people, and Harley Davidsons are probably a similar thing. There's so much history in Harley Davidson that people feel very proud of that, and they feel very protective of it, and they don't, the wild hogs thing is obviously a pretty funny cliche, which is real as well. But I've always been a few when I love something so much, all I want is for other people to feel the same way about it. Like, I started doing jiu-jitsu about 5 years ago, and fuck me, it's like the closest I've ever come to going to church. And I'm literally at the point where I feel like walking up to strangers' doors and be like, hello, do you have time to talk about jiu-jitsu today? Because I've had such a good time with it, and I want other people to share that. And I'm always just amazed that when people are into something that they don't want other people to have that same love and experience and joy. It's very confusing to me. And that's why I think I got it really well with you, because you're one of the people who you're happy to share the love. Sure. This podcast is part of that.
Sure. Yeah, man. I was thinking about that today. And, like when I'm working or whatever, I'll just kind of, when I'm at a stoplight or whatever, I'll like scroll through Instagram. And, and it's like the thought occurred to me is just like, there's an incredible amount of really cute 28-year-old girls who seem to be an authority on vintage Harley Davidsons these days. Like, just like, out of the blue. And, I mean, you could say it's good, you could say it's bad, whatever your opinion is. But it's great, because it's like people are actually doing something, whether they found out about it through a dad or their old uncle or a stack of old Easy Rider magazines, or if they just found it on the internet, it doesn't really matter. They're doing something that they organically enjoy, and it allows them to, connect with other people, and not just, in the United States, but in Australia, around the world. I mean, I met a guy on Instagram from Indonesia that is just as hardcore of a Harley guy that I or you would be, and he loves hot rods, and he loves, like traditional Americana kind of culture. But he'll send me like pictures of like hot rod shows in Indonesia, and they have all the same stuff we have here, like in Indianapolis. But it's like, it's weird because like there's like rockabilly girls, but they're wearing hijabs,
Yeah.
and they have
So
the whole get up, but they have some like leopard print hijab on, like it.
Yeah.
It's really funny, and it's cool. It's cool that people can enjoy something and that it connects them to other people.
Well, one of the most interesting things that happened on that crazy drive in the Charger was that, remember, we stopped in Toledo at 4 o'clock in the morning, got out of the car, took the battery out because there was no alarm system in the car, and this young black dude in the foyer of this Motel 8 or whatever was like, "Is that your car?" He's like, "You saw my friend and I get out of it?" "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you want to see my car?" I was like, "It's 4 o'clock in the morning in Toledo. Of course I want to see your car." And we go at the back, and he's driving like a 72 Catalina on these gigantic rims and everything.
Yeah.
And I posted a photo of it the next day. I was either you, I can't remember if it was you or someone else was like, "Holy shit, dude, that's a rolling 40. I'm probably getting the name wrong or whatever it is, but apparently he was some dude from some pretty intense gang. But in that moment, it wasn't a part Jewish dude from Australia via the Ukraine, a part Irish dude, redhead jugs via the, Australia, and a black dude. It was just three dudes.
Talking about cars.
The common culture was the car, and he wanted us to enjoy his car, and it was fucking wild. Such a cool car.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I find it strange when people impose these rules on someone. Like, for someone to say, "You're not allowed to like the Ramones until this happens," or "You're not allowed to buy a Harley Davidson until this happens." It's like someone telling someone how they can and can't enjoy art. And I find that very strange. Like, art is an interpretive medium, like it's the artist will have a concept. Like when someone designs a Harley Davidson, they have an idea about what it's perceived to be, what its color should be, what it's going to sound like, what the end user will experience. But then the person who buys it has a completely different experience. That changes the color or changes the tank. And I find it very strange that, especially in things like punk rock and motorbikes, where it's meant to be this sense of freedom, it's like, as long as it's by the rules that I set.
Yeah. Yeah.
And look at someone like my favorite bike builder, and like I don't know many names of bike builders because I'm not that neck deep into the culture. Is this Japanese dude Shinya Kimura?
Oh yeah.
Like, I love that
Great.
dude's bikes. Like, they are just like, he beats those things with his hand out of metal. Like, that's not. And a lot of people, they wouldn't be attractive bikes. I don't think. Like, your boy Coddington hot rod people would be mortified by those bikes, and the fact that he's doing it to these vintage bikes would be like just absolute sacrilege to some people, but it's his art.
Yeah. Yeah. You've how many times have you got to go to Japan?
That was my 12th or 13th time.
God, I'm so lucky, man. I'm like I'm super fascinated by Japanese chopper culture, and I do know a couple dudes, either from Japan that live here, or a couple guys that live in Japan, and they're always just like so humble and receptive and hardworking, and their ideas are like rooted in tradition, but it's such a personal style, and it's so like based on like artisanship and like an homage, but also like something personally original. And
absolutely,
it's just amazing, man. And it's like, and it's a way that I don't know if it's like, being of European descent, like we have a certain like style of rigid thinking, or I mean, I don't know. You can theorize however you want, but it's just like Japanese dudes they get it, man, and they just have this whole other like wild style that
which is funny because a lot of their culture is so rigid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and that's the interesting thing. I think that maybe because their culture is so formal, so respectful, that when they do create something, it balls deep, if you know what I mean. They're doing it all or nothing. Whereas probably with white American culture, or like European American culture, and definitely, you know, British Australian culture, we've fought for our freedom, so we have to rebel. But to rebel, we've put all these rules in place, you know, and it's very the constant dichotomy there between the cultures. And tall poppy syndrome doesn't really exist in America that much, does it? Like, do you know that expression?
Yeah, the tall poppy always gets cut first.
Yeah, you know, like Australia has a terrible problem with that because we're cut from a British colony. So when people do well in Australia, we tend to knock them down, even for trying. And look, honestly, America probably goes a little too far the other way to be self-congratulatory a lot of the time about success. But it seems as though Japan is that nice mid-ground where you should strive for success and be content with the success you have. Like, you know, you'll go through a park, like say Yoyogi Park behind Harajuku, and there'll be a guy sweeping paths in an almost militaristic uniform. And he's sweeping that path like it's the last day he's ever going to get to sweep paths in his entire life, because you're going to be the best path sweeper you can, because that's how you should do things.
Right.
And I think that's maybe the difference with their culture. Like when I first started going to Japan, I speak no Japanese, like literally a handful of words, because Japanese for me was a very complicated language to learn. Every language is complicated for me. My brain just doesn't work that way. But what I found was that at first you think a lot of Japanese people in Tokyo or a bigger city don't know English. They do, but they choose not to speak it because they can't do it well. So their theory, I think, is that if you can't speak a language well, why would you speak it? And so I go over there and try and haphazardly speak a couple sentences, and they go, oh, well, this person's speaking some Japanese, so he obviously speaks all the Japanese, and I just would get lost in these conversations.
Right.
I'm going to have to put you on speakerphone for a second soon to charge my phone, because Apple iPhone fucked up and didn't put a separate headphone jack to the battery.
What?
Yeah, the iPhone 7, the headphone jack is the same as the battery jack. So I've got to just unplug you for a second and put you onto speakerphone so I can keep my battery charged. Hold on a second.
That's all right. I just had to plug my phone in too.
There's a little... Is that volume okay still?
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
I wonder how we're on speaker now. Messenger. Hold on. That should be all right. That's got to keep charging. So yeah, I think maybe with Japan, they do have the thing of like, well, they'll pay tribute because that's the respect and the tradition, but they're also going to take something to the nth degree because there's no other way than all in Japanese culture.
Yeah. I
love it there. It's my favorite place. I haven't traveled extensively through Europe, maybe like 4 or 6 countries. Been to America a lot of times, New Zealand. I haven't been through sort of a lot of Asia or Africa, which I'm really keen to go as well. But Japan, I just find so fascinating because it's so much fun. Like I always describe it to people that haven't been as the safest place in the world to be outside your comfort zone. Like, you'll have experiences that are crazy and like nowhere else on the planet, but no one will fuck with you that much respectfully. The only people will fuck with you there. I'm from Japan. Like, we just went there. I just went there with NoFX again a couple of months ago, and we did real world Mario Karts where you actually
I saw that.
drive. Man, it was one of the most surreal experiences in my entire life. If people listening like haven't done it, like you get to drive go-karts through the streets of Tokyo in traffic, dressed as Mario and superhero characters. And man, we did an hour guided tour, which is basically a driver in front of you, driver behind you, guiding, so you just concentrate on driving. Doing maybe, I guess, 65 Ks an hour, which is probably got 40 miles an hour, I guess. 40, 45 miles an hour.
Right.
Not too shabby on a little go-kart. It's fast enough for me anyway. And man, for an hour of that was around $30 US.
Oh, dang.
It's like, how does that even happen? How can that be so cheap?
That is super cheap.
You know?
That's amazing.
And then they took a photo of us all in front of Tokyo Tower and get back to the base area, the base building, and they printed out the photos. And you're like, oh, okay, well, how much for me to buy the photo? And they're like, no, you've already paid. This is free. And I was like, oh my God.
Amazing.
We went to this, my friend Alex Alex and I went to the suicide forest there. Which was pretty gnarly. And first off, really excited is like kind of being in an adult version of Stand By Me.
Right.
And I was like, oh, we're going to see a dead body. And then we hiked for like a couple hours through this snow forest. It was pretty gnarly hiking, and I was dressed in shorts and sneakers, which wasn't really the best because it was snowing. And as we got further and further, I was like, I don't want to see a dead body. I really don't want to see a dead body. And it was this hilarious thing that I posted a photo right when we started hiking. It was really beautiful, just wooden seat covered in snow, and just posted online, on Instagram. Suicide Forest, Mount Fuji, Japan, and that was it. And then I didn't think I've had my struggles with depression and stuff. Never been suicidal though, but I didn't think my mum and my dad, I think, sort of religiously stalk my Instagram, my Facebook, and I get back to the mobile reception 3 hours later as a missed call from my parents' home number. I'm like, that's weird. What's that about? And I listened to the voicemail. It's like my dad going, just checking in to see how you're doing and what's going on today. I was like, this is weird. And something dawned on me. Oh my fucking God. I think I've gone to kill myself in the suicide forest. So I ring him back. This story isn't funny. It was funny at the time anyway. But I ring my dad back. And I was like, yeah, so, my friend Alex and I just went for a hike to the suicide forest. And normally someone would say, suicide forest? What the fuck's that? But Dad's like, oh, yeah, that sounds interesting. And how was that? And I was like, oh, you poor parents. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've got another car waiting over the States, which I'm excited about. Coming over to see you again, the 69 Roadrunner.
Yeah.
And that's been an interesting thing for me too, learning from you and obviously doing a lot of online research as well about the history of NASCAR and bootleg running. And like, as an Australian, we have no knowledge of that history. Like, I always just thought NASCAR was this weird race where you just drive round for no reason. And then learning about that history was really interesting to kind of go, oh, it makes so much more sense to me now.
Yeah.
I just watched. Have you seen the online little clip they released for the Dodge Demon they've redone?
I don't think so.
Man, it's great. You should watch it. It's like the most American thing in the entire world.
The Dodge.
840 horsepower, 870 horsepower, 740 something ridiculous foot-pounds of torque. I don't understand what that shit means, but I know it's really fast. It's the first stock car's ever come with drag radials on it, and it's got like a whatever you call that brake thing, so you can spin your back tires, like a line lock, I guess it's called.
Yep.
And the clip gave me goosebumps. It was pretty rad. So the guy from Dodge just talking me through running, and the thing stock out of the box runs at 9.6 seconds for a quarter mile.
God.
Yeah, it's the fastest production car ever made, apparently. And I think when you get it, it only comes with one seat in it. And I was thinking that it's interesting with Trump, and not to get into a political discourse, because that's another whole 10 hours of conversation, but him talking about wanting to get America back into the sort of the manufacturing industry, I guess. I was thinking, man, to me, that's where it's at. Like, I don't think America can compete with Korea and China in electronics and stuff. They're just too far in front now. Like, they're 20 to 30 years in front in terms of infrastructure alone. And I was thinking, that's, to me, where America could reinvigorate its industries is through the auto industry. There's so many side industries to that as well. And go back to really what I guess America was so well known for.
I mean,
badass cars.
Where I live in Indiana, I mean, this is where the automobile industry is. It's like that's like Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan is where it's all really concentrated. Yep. And then you have plants around like Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, Alabama, and then of course, West Coast or whatever. But it's mostly in like the Midwest, like Great Lakes region. And there's various reasons for that. There was like the natural gas discoveries in the 1890s and Iron Mountain, and they could take iron from one part of the Great Lakes and they could pipe natural gas up, and they could refine the steel, and they could put it on a barge and float it over to Detroit, and then they would build cars there. So that's why it's all still concentrated, is because of the natural resources here. But when people talk about like that just never went away. Like, that's all still here. And not as much as it used to be. So, I mean, that would be one thing with, the president, that I would be like, yeah, we still have, industry. There's plenty of industry around here. It's just not, it's changed. There's robotics, there's different, automated processes, there's, heavy industry isn't as, labor intensive as it used to be, and so on and so forth. But I think one thing, and I think you could probably give me your input on this, is one thing that Americans, by and large, and I'm in kind of a cloistered world with, my personal interests, but I think a lot of Americans, by and large, don't understand the attraction of Americana to people outside of the United States. Whether
I guess it's the same, Australiana would be the same, absolutely.
Yeah, it's people, when you look and you see how crazy people go for, vintage Harley Davidsons from the 30s in Thailand, or American hot rods from the 50s in
traditional tattooing.
Traditional tattooing, I mean rock and roll, punk rock, hardcore, early rap. You have these scenes in, these different cities where there's hundreds or thousands of people who are just super into, a facet of Americana, and it's almost like Americans don't get it. Why would you want to, drive a 78 Regal? Why would that be your dream car if you lived in, Australia? And it's just no, man, to somebody in Australia, or a 69 Roadrunner, why would you want to have a 69 Roadrunner in Australia? It's just because it's fucking cool, and it's big, and it's American, and it's loud, and it's vulgar, and it's just powerful, and and it's shiny, and it sounds awesome, and it makes a statement.
And it's not the same as every other car on the road now.
Yeah, and I think Americans have kind of lost that, pride, and that's one of the things I enjoy about having, the communication and having friends from overseas, from Australia or Russia or England or, Indonesia or wherever, is that they really, friends like you really have a way of validating what I like about my own country. You know what I mean?
Do you think that part of that is that instead of being proud of a 69 Roadrunner or of rock and roll, is part of the problem that by and large a lot of Americans are just proud of a flag now and that's it?
It's real weird, man. I'm obviously very patriotic, as you know, but it's I'm also very skeptical, not to get too deep into political stuff, but I'm also extremely skeptical of the government, but I'm love my country.
See, I think if I said to you, what makes you proud to be American, you would say, our contributions to the automotive industry, our, contributions to music, contributions to filmmaking. There's American culture that you are proud of,
right.
So that's what you base that on. Whereas I think maybe for the general populace it's just, why are you proud to be American? Because America's number one. Well, it's not. Number one's what? It's sort of I guess that's the difference between flag waving and patriotism in my mind.
Right.
Flag waving is literally just saying America or Australia,
Right.
But
we're number one.
I think being patriotic is great. I don't think there's anything wrong with being patriotic at all. But not at the cost of someone else's patriotism, and not at the cost of, I guess not at the expense of actually understanding why you're patriotic.
Right.
It's not just because we're the big kid in the schoolyard. It should be because we've done stuff that's actually good.
What's that? What is it? An Adam Sandler's movie where there's the O'Doyles? O'Doyle's rule. Like, it seems like that's...
Is that Seinfeld? O'Dora Wolves.
Oh, Mandelbaum.
Mandelbaum, that's it. Yeah, Mandelbaum.
Yeah, I think some of it is really like that, and like people don't they don't get why it's good to be proud. You know, it's like okay, we have the biggest military, great. You know, biggest, most powerful military ever, and you know, most successful country ever. Whatever, but like, that's all very abstract. You know, like that's all very like kind of a theory, really.
Well, it's like saying you're the prettiest country.
Yeah.
You know, the most beautiful woman in the world. Well, who says that exactly? Who judges this?
Yeah. It might be pleasing to some, but it might be, repellent to others. And I think what, like as an American, like when I, things that like really like get me like, going, like if I watch like some old like Otis Redding video, or I listen to like a, Lefty Frizzell record, or, some like killer bluegrass from the 50s, or like I look at like a, Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am, or, or like watch The Wild One, or just whatever. Like that kind of classic Americana really makes me proud to be an American. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of Americans don't have that same connection to their own country. It's almost...
What do you think's changed? Or is it nothing's changed? It's simply that's just simply the culture that you've absorbed, where someone else... See, when I explain you to people that haven't met you, friends of mine over here, I'm always like, the reason I like Eric is because he's a flag-waving and patriotic American who grew up on a really good diet of 80s hardcore punk.
Yeah.
So you have all the potential in the world to be a redneck, but in my mind, and obviously only in my mind, a very good moral barometer. And that's what I like about you. I think you've got a really good moral barometer. You're happy to call someone out. I don't think there's anything wrong with being proud.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's what are you actually proud of? It's just that thing, like it's not. I don't get saying it goes back to the Ramones t-shirt argument. Well, why are you proud because you know more about a band than someone? That just means you read something.
Yeah.
Why not educate someone and make the world a better place?
Right.
When I talk to or listen to someone like you talk about patriotism, I see it as a way that someone is trying to enrich the world, not put some other part of the world down.
Yeah, exactly. And like the Chevrolet brothers, for instance, like Louis and Gaston Chevrolet, like they're buried like 5 minutes from my house, and they went to the church that used to be next to where I lived 20 years ago or whatever, and they were just like really humble guys, like French Catholic brothers, but they created this like insane legacy, Chevrolet Motor Car Company. And a lot of people, I think maybe it's like an issue of like people don't personalize things anymore. Like they don't look for that like personal connection where they can kind of put it on like a level that they can really connect with, instead of like looking at like the big orb of, that idea, the Chevrolet Motor Company. It's like they don't just go to like the graves of Louis and Gaston, and they're just like these super humble graves. They're not even in crypts or anything. They're just like two little gravestones. And it's like
crazy, because in my mind I would have imagined there would have been these gilded 59 Bel Airs or something.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's crazy, man. And then you go to like another. I mean, for an example, I'll just another Indianapolis thing. If you go to the gravestone of John Dillinger, it's huge. I mean, it's not the biggest one in the cemetery, but like you can see it like 100 yards away. Dillinger, like you can just see it, but then you look at like the Chevrolet brothers, and their gravestones put together aren't even like a tenth of the size of Dillinger's. And it's
crazy, right?
Yeah, it's weird. So I think that's what the problem is with most Americans is like they can't put things on a personal scale that makes it relatable, so they can only like relate to like the bigger idea of something. And I think that's where, kind of patriotism goes off the rails for me, because I think about like my grandpa, being in World War II, or my other grandpa being in Korea, and like how it changed them, and and it's just like, well, I'm not gonna poo-poo their sacrifices. Like, I'm gonna honor the sacrifices they made, and go forward with my life. And again, I think a lot of Americans don't have that ability to personalize things.
Well, I said I come from a military, but I'm the only person in my family that's not in the armed forces or hasn't served. And I always have that theory. I'm like, I absolutely am proud and support the soldier, but I question the government that sends them places.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the difference, maybe having that ability to separate that. Like, I remember almost getting into a punch-up with an American once in a bar because we were talking about 9/11, and I said, well, I think it's terrible that those people died. It's horrific, and I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. But the American government's had that coming for a really long while, and he was just lost his mind that I would dare besmirch his country. I was like, no, I'm not talking about your country. I'm talking about the leaders that do things in other countries, and he couldn't separate those two things.
Yeah,
so I ran really far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's the same thing where it's just like, you look at an event like that, and it was hugely traumatic, and there've been a couple people in the program where it's like it's come up and we've shared our stories or whatever, and it was hugely traumatic, and then you step back with some distance with, what is it, like 16 years of distance now, and you start to look at it on like a more personal scale and kind of like take the Lego blocks of the whole day apart and kind of look at them each individually, and then you kind of start to see like, okay, well, maybe it wasn't really what I thought it was. Maybe it was something else. And again, that's where I go off the rails with patriotism, where, I mean, man, I have friends who are deployed right now, and I mean, I don't want them to be in harm's way, but it's like, that's what they wanted to do with their lives. They wanted to serve their country. That was their, calling. And man, I support that, but it's just like, they don't get to, it's just like the dump truck driver, It's like, he may not want to, build a road through a cornfield, but he wanted to be a dump truck driver, so he's, going to have to go get a load of gravel and, build the road through the cornfield. And I don't know. I think it's a funny, and I don't know if it's unique to America, but it seems like
part of it. There is part of it, I think, and again, no disrespected intent, just an observation. America, I think, for a very long while was very insular.
Yeah.
From an outsider's point of view, you've got a World Series of baseball that only had American teams.
A couple Canadian teams. A couple Canadian teams.
Isn't Canada North America?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's right. Like, so it's actually called the World Series. Hey, what a surprise! An American team won the World Series again.
Yeah.
And I think whereas if you have the World Cup of rugby, I think it's South Africa, England, Australia, New Zealand. Like, it's actually quite a few countries competing in it. And I think, in part, again, negative and positive, that is very good to have that sense of self and sense of place. But, it does then somewhat shield. Like, I remember a lot of news articles around 9/11 with Americans being interviewed going, well, man, this is like terrorism like the world's never experienced before. It's like, no. There's been terrorism around the world for a very long while. Like, I lived in England in the 80s when I was a young kid, when the IRA was really quite active.
Uh-huh.
And coming from a sleepy little town like Brisbane to suddenly being, as a 10-year-old kid, being metal detected going into a hamburger bar by a police officer. That was really confronting, and the fact you walk around the city like London and there was no garbage bins anywhere because the IRA kept putting bombs in them.
Yeah.
I think that's only is that the rest of the world's been experiencing these things for a very long while.
Yeah.
But America's geographic isolation, its political isolation.
Well,
I should say insular, not isolation.
Yeah. Well, so I was listening to, some guys talk about, the Manchester attack, last week. And they were saying that at the height of the IRA in the 70s and 80s, there were only 100 active terrorists. That's as big as the IRA was. That's as big as it was. And I mean, of course, there were bombings in London and Northern Ireland and everywhere, obviously, and they're tragic and terrible, and I understand that. But again, it's that personal level where it's I try to explain to people, I'm like, you got to step back and get perspective, man. There were some people talking about things going wrong in South Africa, and then I send them pictures, and I'm like, yeah, all these hipsters in Cape Town that are wearing clam diggers and riding fixed gear bicycles and drinking lattes and playing guitar on the beach. It's I don't that's what they're doing, and you're telling me that the whole country's going to crap. It's just something's not lining up, and what's So yeah, man, it's really, really funny, and I think my personal opinion is that if you appreciate America as a free society with rights and a great legacy of freedom and struggle and taming the frontier and all that, and especially mid 20th century, all the great stuff like rock and roll and country music and jazz and cars and Levi's and Marlboro and Budweiser and all that, well, then you should really honor that, and instead of focusing on the latest fear porn in the news, maybe go listen to an Elvis at Sun Records record and just appreciate that instead of focusing all of your anxiety. I don't know.
It's an echo chamber idea, isn't it? You surround yourself with like-minded people. So those South Africans at the moment are going, well, hold on, life isn't terrible right now, but from an outsider's point of view, it could be really terrible. It's hard, isn't it? I guess also maybe it's just the transmission of this news is so much faster now.
It is, man. It's strange.
When I was growing up, I really only knew about 5 bad things. I knew about the Vietnam War because my dad was in it. I knew about World War I and World War II. I knew about apartheid, and I knew about a famine in Ethiopia.
Right.
And that was kind of it. That was all the bad stuff as a kid I really knew about.
Yeah.
But man, if you're a kid now, you're a lot more savvy to the actual real world workings of the world, aren't you?
Yeah.
So perhaps that's it. Perhaps again, that good and bad of technology is that technology has allowed us to share information around the entire world.
Yeah.
But it's also sharing a lot of negative information.
Well, I think one of the reasons why Americans are so fat is because it's just cortisol, man. I think we're exposed to so much negative information that that we just people, instead of going out and walking around and going to the park and looking at a tree and just looking at the trunk or the way the branches go and really relaxing and connecting with nature, it's they cocoon themselves, and they're shoving food into their mouth and trying to watch this distracting garbage entertainment, and it's man, you gotta get out of the world and get out of your head and connect to something that's real, But yeah.
Absolutely. I was listening to a really interesting Joe Rogan podcast about that, where he's talking about that the human body is being designed through evolution, if you go down that path, which I do, to conquer struggles, and that's part of doing better. And so maybe there's that part of people that's just given up. It's just too hard. Like they don't feel as though they can, language becomes so global, everything's fucked.
Right.
The world's going to hell, so there's parts of the world that are going to hell. There's a lot of parts that aren't. And so, maybe there's that idea, if people don't keep working at their struggles and don't try and do more and try and do better, their bodies just give up, I guess.
Yeah, and it's just a real funny thing, man. And I noticed too, like a lot of people have sort of like disengaged from like popular culture. Like, I don't even know what popular culture is. I mean, this sort of like hip hop, R&B kind of, auto tuner and singing style. Like, I think that's like popular culture. I don't know.
But is that maybe a generational thing as well? Like, if we were having this podcast conversation in the 1950s, or should I say 1960s, would we be talking about how we don't understand this new band called the Beatles?
Well, I mean it in the sense of like, what do people agree on as popular culture? Because there's like bands like you or I might think of like the Ramones as like a really big band, and they're a huge band. But then you think about like Led Zeppelin. All right, well they were even bigger than the Ramones. Then you think about like the Rolling Stones. Okay, well they were bigger than Led Zeppelin. So on and so forth. But man, there's probably dozens or if not hundreds of bands right now that are just as popular as the Ramones were in their prime, that like you and I as like middle-aged men just don't pay attention to,
or haven't even heard of.
So it's like, to get like an agreement on what popular culture is now, I don't even know where to start, man.
Yeah, and I guess it also gives, it's even saying something like hot rod culture, for some people, Goddington was hot rod culture.
Right.
For me, not so much,
Right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like I said, it's the positive and the negative of everything. I said, as the more music's out there, that's great, but there's also more to have to cut through.
Yeah. That's why I just stick with what I know.
What was the last new band, like in inverted commas, the last new band you listened to that really turned you on?
The last new band, like a new modern band, you mean?
Yeah, for me it was the Bronx. I know the Bronx has been around for a long while now, but for me it's still a new band, if you know what I mean. They're not a band I grew up on. They were the first band in a really long while that made me just go, holy fuck.
Yeah.
There's something to this.
Yeah. Probably the biggest band I've just like really flipped out over in the last few years is they're called the Alalas from LA, and they're this sort of like folk rock psych band, but also kind of like really like pop oriented in a way, and just really rooted in like kind of late 60s music, but like really fresh and modern, and just good songwriters and stuff. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, I really love them, from Australia.
Yeah, they're doing really well around the whole world, aren't they?
Yeah. They was it like a year ago, I think. They kicked off their tour in Indianapolis, like up the street from my house.
Yeah,
that was really funny.
I can't say I've never seen them live.
Oh, they're great. They just so much energy, and I think there's like 8 people in their band or something, and they're just all doing something, and it's really cool. Yeah, whole show. But but that's what I mean. It's like you can be a band from Australia, and you could come to the States, and you can do like a full, 30 or 40 date tour here, and sell out 1,000, 2,000 seat halls, and really put on a good tour, go back home with a lot of money in your pocket, and like still be virtually unknown. Like it's weird.
Yeah, do you think and surely social media's had a big part in that?
Oh, for sure.
Like, as in a positive way, like actually exposing bands to people.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I mean, I don't know how it is in Brisbane, but like sometimes on the rare occasion that I do go out to see a band, I'm like, where did all these people come from? You know?
What are all these young people doing here? I don't like them.
Yeah. Don't you know who I am?
What do you think the next internet thing's going to be? That's what I'm always fascinated with this. You know, like when, you know, like Facebook is, obviously Facebook is the big dog in the yard still.
Right.
But, you know, then Instagram comes along, boom, you know.
Right.
And then Snapchat comes along. I feel like Snapchat's fading a little, maybe. I've never really used it that much.
Seems like Snapchat's for like internet models and like teenage girls.
Yeah, that seems right. What's the next thing? You know, that to me is amazing. Like, because this, like, think about, you know, we've lived through cassettes, vinyl, CDs, DVDs.
Yeah.
Yeah, or 8-track, probably not so much for me.
Laserdisc.
Then Laserdisc, and then out of all of them, vinyl's made the comeback.
Yeah, it's so weird.
There's bands in Australia releasing cassettes again, which I think is really funny, but vinyls definitely make a huge comeback.
Yeah.
But now, like, the transference, like, you know, that's say roughly 40 to 50 years that technology has all filtered through and come back again.
Right.
But Friendster to MySpace to Facebook to Instagram to Snapchat is probably 15 years.
Yeah.
Maybe a fraction less, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I had a Friendster account. I always felt
I
bad
did
for
too.
Friendster. I feel like it was the same color as Facebook.
I did too. I'm still friends with one of my, like, I had a handful of friends on Friendster, and I'm still friends with one of them to this day on all of my social media, and I have her phone number in my phone.
Does Friendster still exist? Is it online still?
I think it does.
I think I'm logged in. Remember MySpace top 8 was a big thing?
Oh, yeah.
Your top 8 friends.
Yeah, and people would get mad if you weren't in their top 8.
And that was about, even with Instagram, when it first started, people would call people out for not having iPhone photos. Like, that's not an iPhone photo. They'll be actually mad about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And now it's just porn companies basically uploading high definition video.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think everything technology just turns to pornography eventually.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, porn pretty much like drove the growth of the internet. I think like out of the first 100 websites, like 75 of them were porn related. I mean, just something ridiculous. But
oh my god, it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm just so curious as to see what the next thing's going to be. Because
do you ever get the sense of, like, you know, like you're 45, I'm 47. Do you ever get the sense of, like, we, as, like, the age that we're at in our lives, we're just, like, still breaking new ground? Because, like, there's never been a generation...
Absolutely.
There's never been a generation to, like, reach their mid-40s like we have, you know?
Absolutely. I feel like we're both parents, right?
Sure.
And so I feel as though part of that has allowed us, more than my parents and definitely more than their parents, to balance being a parent and a friend, because we're sharing technology. It's not the kid hiding the radio under the sheet at night to listen to the rock and roll that his parents didn't want him to listen to. I'm sure those parents, those kids exist still, but for the most part, like, you know, my daughter's 9 this year. I took her to see Katy Perry because she likes Katy Perry. I'm not going to tell her not to listen to it because that's mean, but I'm going to still tell her about, you know, other artists that I like that I think are better than Katy Perry, so she can choose for herself. You know,
Sure.
I take her to see movies with me, like we share those experiences.
Right.
And so I think maybe that's also part of why you and I are retarded teenagers still.
Yeah.
like we I don't think either of us are career dudes. We're not like, oh, I'm going to be a career guy. I'm going to rise to the heights of this company, get that Rolex and that new
couldn't do it, man.
Nissan GTR. That's just not us. So
nope.
I call it pirate life. It's a big thing for me. Where basically, I put people into two basic categories: destination orientated and journey orientated. I think you and I are both on the journey orientated side of things.
For sure, man.
So probably maybe you and I have a slightly different experience of this technology as well, because we've always listened to music, we've always watched movies, we've always wanted to know more. Like we're looking for treasure.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that thing of like, we, look at all the bands we grew up on who are still playing.
Yeah.
NoFX, there's Bad Religion, like all those sorts of bands who seem to be aging more disgracefully in a good way than the bands our parents maybe listened to. Maybe we're more accepting of the idea of a 50-year-old dude playing punk rock because we want to be 50-year-old dudes listening to punk rock.
Yeah. So the other night, when was that? I guess Saturday. So I went and picked up my blue van. I wasn't going to talk about that on the show yet, but whatever. So I went to Illinois and picked up something, and
a nondescript vehicle of some nature.
A shiny, yes, maybe a primary color vehicle, yeah. And so my friend Jeff rode over with me and brought it back. And so he's like, "Hey, let's go get a couple beers." I'm like, "All right." So we go to the neighborhood and go to a bar called La Revolucion. And he starts talking about one of his buddies from Australia. And he's like, "This guy is a Zero Boys freak." He's just saying, he's like, "This guy, you freaking loves the Zero Boys." And I'm like, "Well, they're from Indianapolis, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "That Tufty, the bass player, owns this bar that we're in?" And he's like, "No way."
No way.
And then I'm like, "And that's Bruce from Toxic Reasons in the back that runs the kitchen, and Tufty is also in Toxic Reasons." And he's like, "Oh my God." So we go outside, and Tufty comes walking up, and I'm like, "Hey man," David is his real name. And we just like start shooting the shit with him, and my friend's like, "Hey, could I take a picture with you if you don't mind?" And Tufty's like, "Yeah, sure, of course." So, he take a picture, he sends it to his buddy, and his buddy just like loses his mind. Just like, "Oh my God." Like you would run into, Mick Jagger on the street. Which to some people, arguably, that would be as important as Mick Jagger. But the cool thing about Tufty is like he's like 10 years older than us at least, and he's still rocking, man. Like he's as good or better of a player when Vicious Circle came out. Like he's just still great, and like I want to be that guy, man. Like I don't want to grow up and like quit playing music. Like I want to still be vital and doing what I love and. And
I feel like, because I was hanging out with my parents yesterday, I had that thought about going, do you guys get this isn't a phase now?
Yeah. Right.
Like my hair's not bright coloured anymore. I'm probably dressing a little bit more demurely, but the tattoos are getting more, the beard's getting longer. It's just like, it's really interesting, and maybe is it that, like, I meet people I went to school with, and it sounds really harsh, but a lot of them feel like very hollow people. Not that they're not good people, but there's a vacuum inside them that they went for the dream and the dream didn't come true, so now they're not sure what to do with their lives.
Yeah.
Whereas again, going that journey orientated versus destination orientated is that maybe because our peers are those same journey orientated people, this life makes more sense.
Right. Do you ever like meet people like our age and they're into like something that's just so out of character for them? Like I'm trying to think of an example from somebody I know, but like they get to like age, mid 40s, and they're like, oh, I'm going to take up competitive figure skating or whatever, or I'm going to start, I'm going to start, weaving rugs, like artisan rugs, or just whatever. And it's like, but you were like a suburban mom, and you have a minivan. I think there's some people, like exactly what you're saying. It's like they live their lives up to a point, and it's like the dream isn't giving them the fulfillment, so they take on something like really crazy, and they get
looking to fill that void.
Yeah, and I don't feel like you or I don't feel like we've ever had that void. Like I feel like because we're like seekers, we've always been like collecting, treasure and things and experiences and relationships and people and places, and it's like a different way to have a really like a genuinely full life, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think so, and that's a big thing for me. That like when I was talking to my granddad yesterday, like I said, he's 101. He was having that chat. It was kind of weird to watch. My dad's a very stoic man, and you'd see he was struggling a little bit. And granddad's just like, can't complain. I've had a good life. I've had good experiences, met good people, and he's ready to check out. Like he's done,
Sure.
And that, weirdly enough, it filled me with a bit of a sense of solace, to be honest. Like I was kind of like, oh, cool. Like my grandma on my mum's side died when I was a lot younger, and I remember sitting with her in hospital when she was dying, and she was like, I'm not ready to go. There's things I haven't done, and she was quite panicky about it. And I got a lot of Peanuts tattoos, and Charles Schultz, this is all anecdotal stuff, that probably my version of it, but basically he announced his retirement after 50 years. He drew his last strip on a Friday, which was due to be published on a Monday. I think he died on a Sunday night. So to me, that's a dude who's like, I've done everything I'm meant to do. I'm good. I'm going to check it out now. And I think that's maybe, again, that for so long during the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and definitely the 80s, people were sold the dream, the 50-year gold, watch, you got to have this retirement fund set up. You're meant to have this investment portfolio. And for the most part, that was a dream that was sold to them by companies making money out of those, selling those dreams.
I know.
Unsurprisingly. And so I guess maybe it's kind of, not the change of the tide a little, and it's not through any sort of genius on our part, but being a little more left of centre, probably both of us through our whole lives, and not finding that satisfaction in that pursuit of dreams has perhaps again led us to making those realizations earlier and not caring about the gold watch.
Yeah.
Like I call them porch stories. At the end of the day, when you're 90 years old, that's what you got. You got porch stories. You got to sit on, get the grandkid on the knee and tell them about the time your granddad was an idiot and won a drag race. Like that's to me the bit where I'm really looking forward to it. Like rather than being feared of all these things I haven't done.
Yeah. Me too, man. Me too.
And also, I think probably, and not to lump yourself in with myself, I've made a lot of fuck-ups. I've fucked up a lot of stuff in my life, like literally every business I've ever had. I've done really good at running into the ground. I've like every mistake I basically could make, I've done.
I could probably do a year of shows, just an hour every week, and just talk about the time I fucked up XYZ.
I love it. And so maybe us getting through that, kind of dusting ourselves off, picking ourselves up, losing a couple of friends but gaining a whole bunch of new ones, you kind of go, oh shit, okay, that hurt but it didn't kill me, and shit, okay, let's do this again.
Yeah.
Like to go, keep searching.
And I think
like that struggle thing as well. Like I was talking before about the Joe Rogan was talking about the human body and mind needs strugglers. Maybe it's not that I don't want to have that. You got to pay your dues and live a hard life. Like I don't want to pay my dues. I don't want to fucking live a hard life. But there is that element of character building, of fucking something up, of rebuilding, that kind of puts a lot of other stuff into perspective and makes you realize the things that are important to you.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think I think too, like when you, like you said about like losing friends, it's like, man, I've been on this like process of like the last probably at least 4, maybe 5 years of like just getting people out of my life, and like I, quit making excuses for people, and I get all these like fucking like negative ass wipes out of my life, and then I meet like all these new incredible people, like like we've been friends for what 3 or 4 years now, and I'm just like, oh, like, I love James, like he's awesome, like he's my bro, like he's lives in Australia, and but we talk all the time on Facebook and whatnot, and and I didn't have that in my life 4 or 5 years ago, so it's you get to this point of life where we are now, where you're like, oh yeah, fuck that guy, fuck him, he's an asshole, he's gonna rip me off, he's gonna try to screw my girlfriend or whatever, so get him out of my life. And there's going to be, 5 people better that come into my life just automatically that are going to be way better than that guy I had to make all these excuses for. And
sure. Do you think there's also something about the long distance friendship? I've pondered this a lot because I've got a lot of, it's probably half of what I'd call, I've probably got 10 really good friends in the world, like really, right. Like you've cried, you've laughed with those sort of friends.
Yeah.
And you're definitely one of them. And
thanks, bud.
And is there an element that because you don't have that day-to-day minutiae of life with them, that it makes things a little bit easier to have? You kind of you don't have to pay bills with them. You don't have to work that shift with them. You don't have to hear the same. Oh, he's dating that girl again. 4 times last year. Is there that element? I call it this thing called like 10 times friends, and that you're probably only going to see them 10 times in real life in your whole life, but they have this dramatic effect upon you. But because, and I think a lot of it comes from touring with bands, where you have these really short, intense bursts of time with people, and you get to see people at their best, their worst. Something that might, in a normal friendship, take quite a few years for you to see. Like Jugs, he came to America with me, it's a good example. You met that dude at the height of his highs, where he was driving the car around for me, and, then fucking a month later, the dude's in chemotherapy. You got the lowest of the lows with him as well.
Yeah, crazy.
And so you have this the diamond comes out a lot quicker because you don't have to dig through all the fucking dirt to find it.
Yeah.
So it's a bit more stripped back, a bit more, also I guess probably partly through age, where you feel comfortable going, what the fuck, dude, this is how it is. Like I'm not going to try and pretend or hide it, but you're also happy to share the good things. So I find that there's sort of maybe, the friendships that are easier in a weird way because they're more simple.
Right.
Simple's the right description, actually, but there's less complication with the friendship. There's less detritus to dig through. There's just, well, this is it.
It's like you can cut right to the good stuff. Like
that's it, dude.
The stuff that, it's like you cut to the bone quicker. It's like you get to the important parts of the friendship. You don't have.
And again, that may be an age thing.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I have younger friends, friends in their 20s too, and I have a son in his 20s. And, that generational divide, it's like, that's obvious to some degree. And, millennial people, and no offense, I love my millennial friends, but they kind of relate in a different way. But I think, like, I don't know. I think the distance has something to do with it, but I think like generationally has something to do with it too, because like you and I have a lot of the same like pop culture touchstones and similar experiences. Growing up, and I mean even I grew up in Indiana. You grew up in Australia. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's maybe a combination. It's age, it's distance, it's shared background. It's a little bit of everything.
And definitely the internet has to help, because I mean, literally, this is the thing. Like, our friendship would have been a lot more, not difficult to maintain, but a lot more hours to maintain 20 years ago, because we would have been writing letters or just phoning each other.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one thing I actually love about the internet, about social media, is that I've got, like I said, 5 to 6 really good friends spread out around the world who I can actually keep in day-to-day, not necessarily contact with, but an observational point of view on their life, and actually understand, hey, that dude's bought a new van. That dude's, his kid's just going to college.
Yeah, or I'll see some, girl in Brisbane, and I'll be like, man, she seems really cool, and she's really cute, and I wish she didn't live literally on the other side of the world, but, maybe I'll meet her someday. And that's the crazy thing is, like, like meeting you and Jugs, but, like, there's, like, a friend I made on the internet that's, like, just happened to be from Indianapolis. She's, like, coming to visit next month from Australia.
Wait, she's Australian?
She's from the United States, but she went to college in Indianapolis, and then she married an Australian and moved there.
No way, that's crazy. And you didn't know her before she moved to Australia?
No, and the crazy thing is we even had some of the same friends when she lived in Indianapolis, but we just never...
That's so crazy.
Yeah, we just never crossed paths, physically here. So it opens up. It's like, I can't remember, there's some movie in the 90s where it was like some girl, and it was like, what would have happened if she would have turned right? And they would show...
Sliding doors?
Maybe. And it was like, what would happen if she turned left? What would have happened if she stopped and tied her shoe here as opposed to, like, across the street? And I think that's probably another thing the internet has sort of, like, broken down. It's like, there's definitely still the missed encounters and ships in the night, but I think it lessens that. I think it removes that mystique of how, you never would have met someone if you would have, not walked out of the bathroom a minute before or whatever. It's like, oh,
your car hadn't broken down outside that pub or...
Right. But now it's just like, you pick up your phone and you're just dinking around on Facebook. It's like, people you may know. Oh, okay, sure. And you just meet all these people and you figure out, like, oh yeah, we actually crossed paths, but we didn't connect, 5 years ago or whatever. And it's
so interesting, dude. And again, what a crazy time to be alive.
What a time to be alive.
I can stalk people all over the world.
I know. Cool, man. Well, I'm going to have to taper this off, but dude, it's always great to talk to you. You're literally one of my favorite people, and can't wait to get to come over and visit again.
Yeah, and we got to get you here to do some shows.
I will. I gotta get a few things lined out, in my life before I can go on any big overseas adventures. But
I'll have to kidnap you, not give you a choice in, and just bring you back.
A month later, I wake up in the trunk of a classic American muscle car, being pulled off a container ship.
Be good to yourself, sir. And go on, when you hang up, go and look at the Dodge 2007 Demon Reveal and become an even more patriotic American.
I will. I absolutely will.
Travel safe, sir. We'll talk soon.
All right, buddy. Thanks for talking to me. I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, that was my conversation with my good buddy James Straker from Down Under. You can keep up with James on Instagram. His personal profile is J, like just the letter J, J Straker Troublemaker. And then he also has a business-related profile where you can check out his vintage arcade games and other stuff he's got going to bring in the bucks. And that is We Make Trouble. And I'll include those in the show notes and link to them on the blog as well. Always a pleasure to talk to James. Good buddy. Very dear friend. All right, well, I looked at the show running time, and once I get this outro done, it's going to be about 2 hours of pod. So if you don't get it all in one sitting, just, listen to it next week like it's a new show. There won't be a show next week. There'll be another one the week after that. So it'll just kind of balance out. What else? I got my blue van back. That's like big news in my life. That took forever. My buddy Jed over in Quincy, Illinois had it. He found another car he wanted to buy, and he was gracious enough to hold on to the van until I could get over there and buy it. So I got it back. I got some plans for it. If you follow my personal Instagram, you'll see pictures of it. Awesome 78 Chevy G10 standard body van with a 350 combo. Really hauls ass on the interstate. Great paint job. Got some rust, but we'll get that fixed. So that's going to be the official Rulers and Riders show van. So I got some plans for that too. So just kind of watch that, see where it goes. I'm still waiting on parts to get my bike back together. The polisher has them. He's a little backed up, so unfortunately probably not going to be able to ride it to the reunion on Saturday, but there's a slight possibility. But soon, I'll be a ruler and a rider very soon myself. Be sure to check out the show blog. That'll be linked in the show notes as well. Cool pictures of James, some clips of his band, the Melnicks, as well as other stuff. So check that out. Also, the Patreon's still going. You can still buy a shirt, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. I don't do this for free. It takes a lot of money, all that stuff. If you got a few bucks, throw it my way. You're going to probably buy at least 3 new t-shirts this summer. Let's just be honest. Why not buy a Rulers and Riders t-shirt? I know it's black, maybe not the best for summer, but, it doesn't show dirt. So it's got that going for it. So keep that in mind. That's about it. Not doing as much bike stuff this summer. Doing a little bit more music stuff. Pretty stoked on that. My buddy Bloodshot Bill's coming to Indy in a couple weeks. Deke's coming to Indy. So we're all going to hang out and, do some music-related stuff. I'm also working on some new music myself. So hopefully here in a month or two, I'll have something for you there. If you want to go on my Instagram and there's clips of me singing songs and just, being a jackass, definitely check it out. I think I got an okay voice. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. If you have any feedback, as always, I love to hear from you. Best way to do that is on the show Instagram. That's rulers_and_riders. Best place to get a message to me is through there, or you can also email me through the show. That is about it. It's a full moon tomorrow. I feel like an overcharged battery. I don't know why it affects me so much, but it totally does. I feel very kooky. Hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you down the road.